Do you want your Sims houses to feel like real lived-in homes? You're in the right place. Today I'm sharing my best interior design tips with you, from clutter to playability that will level up your builds instantly. So grab a cuppa, fire up The Sims 4, and see if you can spot one tip that you have never used before. If you missed the last video where we tackled floor plans, hit the playlist link that's in the description so you don't miss a step. Have you ever struggled with awkward furniture placement or blocked camera views? Here is a pro trick. Think of your build as a bowl. So the tallest items, such as refrigerators, wardrobes, and showers, go on the outside edges, forming the walls of your bowl, while shorter items fill the middle. You might be wondering, why should you do this? If you put a tall object in the center of your home, it will block your view, make taking screenshots an absolute pain in the neck. But if you keep the middle open and only put short items in here, the view blocked is a lot smaller. While you're planning your layout, use filler furniture as placeholders. And by filler furniture, I mean the furniture that you would put in. So if you need countertops, for example, then put a countertop in. But in this case, just use the absolute cheapest thing that you can find. So in the kitchen, use the counters to map out some space. So if we want to put the door here, for example, and say a door leading from the living room into the kitchen, maybe we'll want a door here. Maybe we'd want a door here as well, and possibly a door here. So that's 3 doors leading into the kitchen. We'll put some countertops here, and you want to go ahead and use the proper shapes of the counters as well. So if you need a corner piece, then put a quarter piece in. And I would recommend, and this is how I typically do it, instead of putting a stovetop or a sink or a refrigerator in the build, change the swatch of your counter to represent those different things. You always want to have at least 2 counters, one for cooking and one for clutter. So let's say we want this to be the sink. We can put the stove top here, and then this could be the refrigerator. This right here is a trick that interior designers in real life use. It's called the kitchen triangle. Basically, what it is you arrange the sink, the stove, and the refrigerator in a triangle, where each one is the point of a triangle. It doesn't matter what type of triangle it is, as long as each point equals the point of a triangle. So you see here, we've got 1 point here, then another point there, moving on here to the 3rd point. And using the kitchen triangle gives you the ultimate functional kitchen flow, both in real life and also in The Sims. So here is where a lot of builders trip up. So rooms that are really big will feel empty no matter how much you decorate. Your goal should be cozy, functional spaces where your Sims can move around easily. Let's move here into the living room, and for the living room, we're gonna say that the door leading into the living room is right here. So if this is the door, then we want to start the living room with your typical furniture. So if we go here in the living room, we can start off with the sofas, and we want to start off with a 3-seater sofa. Again, getting the cheapest one that you can find. So you start off with your 3-seater sofas, and then you move down in size from there, getting whatever you can to fit in. You want things that can fit, but also you want your Sims to still be able to move around the area. We put a 3-seater sofa there. A 2-seater sofa would technically fit here. Then we could also have a small living chair, say like over here in a little nook on its own for like a reading nook. So if you want to put a fireplace in, and in this build, putting a fireplace in is totally doable. We're just gonna use this faux fireplace facade to represent our fireplace. You can play around with the placement of the sofa around it. So do you want the fireplace to be the main focal point or a secondary one? Your answers to questions like these will help you determine where to place the furniture. So if the fireplace is going to be your main focus, then arranging the furniture around the fireplace, like this, will give your living room that magazine-ready look. However, if you want it to be a secondary feature, then you would probably want to move the majority of your living room furniture, say, here, going into this nook here, where you would probably have your TV. But personally, I like having my fireplace as the main focus, so we're just going to go ahead and put that there. So once you've placed your filler furniture, and you have a good idea of where you want everything to go, you can start picking a color scheme. So you want to start with the floors by picking a style that is consistent across similar rooms. So for example, if you go for a dark wood floor in one room, kind of like this, then you will probably want to put this same floor in every other room that has wood flooring. And the reason why I suggest that you do it this way is because that's how real-life houses are made. And the same applies to carpeting. Now, where I live, standard practice is to pick one style and color of carpet and put that in pretty much all of your rooms where you want the carpeting to go, just because doing it that way works out cheaper in the long run for most people. However, if you wish to change the colors around per room, then you can totally do that. It is all up to you. This is just me taking real-life examples and applying them into the Sims. Now, tiles and rugs are where you can play to your heart's content with variety. For example, let's say here in the kitchen, you want this nice antique stone tile. And then maybe here in the bathroom, you want the classic rustic tile. And maybe in the upstairs bathroom, if you have one, possibly the in your veins marble tile. And here's a little bit of a top money saving or simoleon saving trick in The Sims. Rugs in The Sims 4 can be really, really expensive. But let's say you want a small rug, say like maybe here in the living room. If you go into carpet and grab a standard carpet, you can then draw over your wooden flooring to give you flooring that's carpeting, but it looks like a rug. So once all of your flooring is set, you can choose either your furniture or your wall colors next, whichever inspires you more. So if we go for walls, let's say in the kitchen, we want to use this tiled pattern with wainscot paneling. Since the flooring is dark tiles, this is made up of like grays and blacks with a bit of, looks like a red terracotta color in there. We could probably go for this for the walls and put that all the way around. And then since I used the green carpeting here in the living room using this green wallpaper, I think would be a really nice tie-in between the two. And once you've got the walls and your floor done, then you can use the colors that you've chosen for the walls and the floor to help you tie in the colors of the furniture and also the style of the furniture that you use. This is where you take your placeholders and you replace them with the furniture that you want. So going back into the kitchen section, I'm thinking for this kitchen, a modern-ish countertop like the Brohill wood counter solution that's from the Parenthood pack will look really nice alongside of the blue that's in the tiles. We wanted this to be the refrigerator. That's your sink. That's your oven. So if we pull out the other countertops and get them all replaced with our countertop of choice. Now I choose the stove, which I think I'll go with the Cooking U Pro. That is a base game oven. And we'll go with the black one that matches the floor and the dark tiles on the wall a little bit. We've got two choices here for the sink. We can either go for a fitted sink, or we could replace this countertop with one of these and use one of these inbuilt countertop sinks. I'm thinking about it. I think I'm just going to take a countertops that we've got and use a sink that goes inside of that countertop. And I'm just going to use the Pure Simplicity sink to save us a little bit of money. And finally, for the refrigerator, we'll just use the Crisponics Adequate and park it right there. And we have plenty of space for Clutter, as well as loads of space for our Sims to prepare their food at. Sticking with the blue theme, this blue of the Gordon Goods Nano Can matches the countertops perfectly, so we'll place the bin there. And this kitchen is actually big enough for a very small table if we wanted it. We could either put a table or we could move this countertop here and put a small island in the center. Let's go ahead and do that. So instead of counters, let's go with the Brohill Kitchen Island. Again, we're going to choose this same blue that we've got going here. And by scooting everything together just so, we have ourselves a nice little island situation going here. And of course, we can grab a couple of bar stools. And let's go with a nice cream color to match these cream tiles here, just so that we don't have too much of a dark color situation going on. Finally, we can add in the doors just to finish off the room, and also the windows, if you haven't already added windows in to the build, that is. Now at this point with the kitchen, if you want to put in upper cupboards, upper cabinets, you can do, but personally, I like to hold off on them because they don't do anything functionally in the game. So I do like to hold off until I've finished the rest of the house, just to make sure that I'm going to have enough money to do so. Are you ready to take your builds from basic to brilliant? We're gonna go into the living room now, and I'm going to show you how to unlock some advanced Sims 4 building magic. So you'll want to use the bb.moveobjects cheat to do this first tip. And to do that, it is Control-Shift-C on your keyboard and bb.moveobjects space on to turn move objects on. Then hit Control-Shift-C again to turn off your cheat console. So after you've done that, you can hold Alt to place objects off your grid for custom layouts. So for example, without using Alt placement, if you grab an end table, for example, the end table kind of clips into the sofas. You can either have it here, that's right inside of this sofa and going above, clipping into both sofas here, or you can put it here where it's up against a wall, but again, very, very close to this small sofa here, or you can move it here so that it's farther away from the sofas. Whichever way you put it, it doesn't make sense, right? So you hit Alt, and that allows you to put it exactly where you want it. And now I'm going to go ahead, let's remove all of this filler furniture and put some nice furniture in here. And as we do that, I will show you a few more tips and tricks. So the next trick I'm going to show you is the Sims 3 camera mode. So we've got this sofa here that I'm going to alt place, and real quick, another thing that I need to mention about alt placing and using the move objects cheat, this is one of the most used cheats in the game, but you need to be really careful with it. Let's say, for example, I've got this basket here, and I want to turn this into a bespoke planter. So to do that, we would take this basket, and then I would take a plant of my choosing. Let's say I want Bob the plant to be placed in here. Move objects allows you to move things inside of each other, and then I can use the 9 and 0 keys to place the plant exactly where I wanted it in this basket. We've got a nice little plant inside of the basket. And let's say that I wanted to add a little bit more extra to it. Maybe I want these flowers in there as well and make it look a little bit prettier. We can totally do that. So now I've got this bespoke plant. Using the move objects cheat can result in your Sims not being able to access these items. Any of these items, say, were something that your Sim could use, Doing this would make it so that your Sims would no longer be able to use any of these items. So if I used one of the new live houseplants, for example, from Enchanted by Nature to make this bespoke plant, then your Sim would not be able to access that plant if I were to use it in here, okay? Just as a heads up. Another thing that I want to mention is the Sims 3 camera. Now, Sims 3 camera mode, camera controls, and Sims 3 camera will enable you to use free rotation using your Alt and your left mouse button. So if I wanted to put this sofa at just a very slight jaunty angle, maybe going more towards the sofas for, make it a little bit easier for your Sims to converse, or, just make the house look a little bit lived in, we can totally do that. Now, I highly suggest if you want to use the Sims 3 camera mode, that you do so using the Move Objects cheat enabled, or else the game will constantly tell you that you cannot place the item. Move Objects cheat on to use the Sims 3 alt placement. If you ever want to reset the rotation of an object, all you have to do is grab the item and then press your comma or your period key on your keyboard, and that will completely reset the item. Let's say you don't want to bother using alt placement, the Move Objects cheat, or the Sims 3 camera. There is another thing that you can do that will give you a little bit more placement freedom without using those different cheats and camera modes. So all you have to do here is press F5 on your keyboard, and this will enable quarter tile placement. Normally, with default mode, you've got full tile placement. So let me get the grid up here, and you can see here, if we look at this leg here, when I move the item, it goes from the middle of one of these little squares to the middle of the next one over. If you hit F5 on your keyboard, then this is incremented by steps. So instead of going from here to here, it goes in between. So you've got a little bit more freedom of movement with the F5. Now, I showed this before, but I'm going to show you again. When you have the Move Objects cheat on, you can use the 9 or 0 keys to raise or lower items. So this is perfect if you want to add things like cushions, toys, or layered decor onto furniture. Instead of an end table over here, let's just say that I want to place this over here. So we're going to get rid of that. I'm going to place this here. If I want it a little bit smaller, I can hit your open bracket keys to make it smaller, or the close brackets to make it larger. So let's say I'm wanting to make it that size. I'm going to use alt placement to place it right there in the corner. And let's say we want to add this potted palm into the vase here. Size it down by 1 so that it fits properly into the vase, and use the 9 key to slightly raise it. And there you are. You've got one potted palm in a vase. And just to show you again, because I know that raising and lowering objects is quite complicated, and it does take a while, or can take a while for people to get used to it, I'll show you again, this time using something that you can definitely see. So let's say, for example, that you want this Forgotten Woman statue on your coffee table. Actually, going to find a better coffee table than that, because that is quite simply a hideous coffee table for what we're going for here. That's quite nice. That ties in with the blue on the sofa, so we'll use this coffee table. Put it right there to make sure that your Sims can get in. And let's take this statue. And you notice, 1, she's rather big, and 2, she does not fit on the coffee table. So I'm going to size her down by 2. Actually, let's size her down by 3, and then center her in the coffee table, and using the 9 key, carefully raise it up until it is flush up against the coffee table. Now, what I like to do is I like hitting the tab key, leveling out your camera, using Q to lower the camera angle. This way you can move up here and make sure that the statue is not floating above the surface. If it's floating above the surface, there is a little clutter cheat that you can use, which I will show you in just a few moments. So the more you experiment with the open and close bracket keys and the 9 and 0 keys, the faster you'll develop an eye for what works, and what works not only for you, but also for your Sims. This is where your house turns into a home. We're gonna use Clutter. Clutter isn't just mess, it is the secret sauce that makes builds feel lived in and unique. Whether you're designing for with a specific sim in mind, a family, or you're just making a cozy starter home that will fit any sim, Clutter choices will set the vibe for your home. So you want to match your clutter to whichever room you're decorating, as well as your individual sims or individual household's story. In your kitchen, for example, you could have things like dish racks, maybe some mugs, maybe even a little bit of baking clutter set out. Your living room might contain things like magazines, maybe some books, quite possibly even a dirty mug or two if you really want to go for a lived-in look. In your Sims bedrooms, you could put things like hobby items, trophies, or maybe even add something like a pile of laundry, or maybe a small quilt stand or something to add a little bit of realism. Or maybe you're building for a sim who has a particular aspiration. So you could add items to tell their story, like maybe a violin for an aspiring musician, maybe a digital sketch pad for an inspiring artist. Now, if you've played The Sims at all, you have probably noticed that the default storage slots on objects can be a little bit weird. So here's a pro placement trick that I've got for you. So let's say you want to put things on this desk. The best thing to do is to fill the desk with random objects until you literally cannot put anything else on there. Then you can take this shelf from high school years, or there's also one in the Dream Home Decorator pack, and you want to place this shelf at the exact same height as the surface where you want to place the item. Then you take the desired item that you want to place on your desk, or whatever surface you're decorating. You put it on the shelf, and then you alt drag it to the surface where you want it. Once you've finished decorating the surface that you want to decorate, you can then remove the shelf, all of the placeholder items that you put on your desk. Now, again, just to reiterate, there is a chance that by doing it this way, or by placing items this way, that your sim will not be able to access it. So if it is anything such as the digital sketchpad, you will want to place the digital sketchpad the normal way on your desk, or else your sim will not be able to use it. Let's move on to lighting. Do you want your builds to look straight out of a Pinterest board? Lighting is the fastest way to make any space feel cozy, dramatic, or ultra modern. Try this. For your next living room or bedroom, skip the ceiling lights. Use table lamps, floor lamps, or wall lamps, and see how much cozier it makes the space feel. So in The Sims 4, every light casts a different vibe. Some lights are warm, some are cool, some will cast shadows, others flicker, and some will fill the entire space. Use this knowledge to your advantage. Figure out what light does what, and use that to create the mood that you want. So warm lights for comfort, cool if you want a modern aesthetic, and directional if you want to add a little bit of drama, or use the lighting to focus people's attention on something like an artwork or a sculpture. So once you've gotten your lights situated in your space, you can go into live mode, and you can actually click on the light and set color and intensity, either individually or for all of that particular kind of light. So for example, with this candle, You can choose set color and intensity, either this particular candle or all candles. So if we just choose this candle, we can make the light bright or really dim. We can change the color of the light, and you can see here on the surface when we click the different colors how the surface reflects that light. And you can do this across the board with all lights in The Sims 4. So in regards to lighting, you also want to be careful that you don't put too much lighting. So for example, around fireplaces, you want to maybe put some candles or a dim directional reading lamp so that the flames of the fireplace don't get overshadowed or overpowered by the other lights. In your bedrooms, you want to keep 2 soft wall lights, like so, and possibly a bedside lamp, which will keep things relaxing. Or you could use different colors of lights alongside of candles to give you a more romantic feel. Again, using the dimmer and maybe a different color. Don't forget to put lights outside as well. Outdoor lighting can make your build completely pop at night, as you can see here. And you can also mix your outdoor and your indoor lights for extra creativity. So for example, these lights here are technically indoor lights, but they look great on either side of the door. Now, if you want to see how your build looks and feels different times of the day, you can change the time here in the UI or with the L button on your keyboard. Now, changing it in build mode like this does not actually change the time of day in live mode, but this just gives you an idea of how your build is going to look at night and at different points during the day. If you want to know what your build looks like in live mode, then you can, if you have Sims on your lot, you can simply go into live mode and hit the play button to see what the build looks like while the world is in motion. Congratulations! By following along with this video, you have unlocked the secrets to making your Sims 4 interiors look next level. But before you go, I've got a little bit of homework for you. Pick one tip from today, either clutter or lighting, and try it in your next build. Snap a before and after screenshot and tag me over on Blue Sky. I'm merely a Sims over there. I love seeing your creativity, and I would absolutely love to see what you've taken away from this video over there. A massive thanks to my paid members for supporting deep dive tutorials like this one. And if you want to join the neighborhood and get exclusive content, hit the join button down below. And are you ready to master all the building cheats that I use every day? Click here on your screen. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. I'll see you there, and happy building.